Thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Paterna, Partner and Chief Revenue Officer here at Compass. And this is Need to Know, our Webisode series where we navigate through the latest industry news, cut out the noise, and get to the good stuff. I'm joined virtually today by Seth Larner, CEO of Compass. Thanks for joining us today, Seth. And we have a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Today is the first in a continuing series of webisodes and additional education material regarding the upcoming changes from the Secure Act 2.0 legislation. This is a huge piece of legislation. It contains more than 90 provisions, and many of these provisions are taking place over the next few years, some a little bit longer. But we wanted to get to these and tell you our approach and how we're doing this. So today we're going to hit on 4 key topics. The first is our approach to the Secure Act 2.0 legislation and our strategy for implementing these required changes. Number 2, we'll talk about the Roth catch-up requirements for higher income earners, including a recent delay in this effective date from the IRS. Number 3, we'll talk about the increases to the small amount force-out limits. And number 4, we'll talk about the self-certification of hardships. And we'll save the Q&A section for the last piece of the webisode. We've got some questions submitted ahead of time, so thank you very much for those of you out there who submitted those questions in advance. If you have additional questions that come up, there's a great feature, chat box. You can enter that in and we'll address those at the end. Try to get to as many as possible. If you do have specific questions about your retirement plan or your situation, please reach out to us directly after the webisode. So, Seth, why don't you get things started and describe what we've been doing here at Compass in order to prepare for the Secure Act 2.0.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We always appreciate you all listening. And yeah, Chris, this is a big change, and we're trying to work through it as we go. There's a lot of questions people are asking us today, and we don't know all the answers. And we're going to come up with the answers as we know things, okay? So the first thing, I want to let you guys know, behind the scenes at Compass, we've created a team, and this team has a dozen people on it, and they're all handling different topics of Secure 2.0 that we think are going to be the most impactful and also coming the soonest to market. So that's the first thing. In addition, we're working with all of our product partners, all of the record keepers and payroll vendors as well too, because a lot of this information is affecting record keepers and payroll providers. One thing to be aware of that I've been in a lot of meetings with some of these record keepers is once they get the guidance we need, it's taking about 6 months, they all estimate, to build out some of these. Now, they're building a lot of these out today, but when they get some more fine-tuning of some guidance, they think it's going to take about 6 more months to build some of this. So we all have to be patient as we go through this, okay? And also, too, the IRS hasn't provided us with great guidance. They have provided guidance, and the guidance says, more or less, Secure 2.0 has been launched. Guidance will be coming shortly. Stay tuned. So they haven't given us any real guidance on any of the topics. With that being said, though, we know some things are coming out, and they're going to be starting next year, and we have to have an opinion on it, and we have to start doing plan amendments and everything else for this. So we've been working with ERISA Council, product partners, to come up with what we believe our opinion is on this, and how we're going to best work it. Just to be aware, we're going to come up with our opinion based off of our guidance, off our knowledge today. That could change, so I want you to be aware of that. But as of today, we're going to take a very conservative approach to a lot of this when we start rolling this out. Okay. The last thing, something about with Compass, what we're doing with this as well too, I want you to be aware is there's going to be a lot of plan amendments. And what we're trying to do is batch things together to make your life as clients easier for everything. So what we're going to do is look at some stuff, say, hey, there's these 4 amendments coming out that are going to be needed. Let's consolidate this into maybe 1 or 2. So we don't have to keep coming to you and say, we're doing this amendment here, signature here, signature there. We're going to try to consolidate this to make it easier for you. So overall, we've got a great process, great team in place to work through all of this stuff. We're working with all of our great partners. We just ask that you all be patient because there's some things some people want today that are technically approved today. We just don't know how to actually facilitate this. So we're going to work on that. But with that being said, I'm going to pass it back to Chris just to talk about the Roth catch-up. I think that's where we're going to start first with the conversation today. So.
Thank you, Seth. Yeah, moving on to our next topic is the Roth catch-up requirement for higher income earners. So what is the rule? The rule says a catch-up contribution for those over age 50 if you are earning more than 100, or if you have earned, more than $145,000 in the previous year, then that catch-up for that individual must be coded as a Roth contribution. So a couple things to note here. The income number is not current year. It's looking at the previous year's income, and that income must be from the same employer. So if you have employees that have joined last year or joining mid-year, you don't count any income from a different employer. So it's very important, though, that you look at your plan. If you do not have a Roth source in your plan, then those catch-up contributions would not be allowed for those higher income earners that are over age 50. So this is why our opinion here at Compass and our recommendation is that all 401k plans add the Roth source if they don't have it already. Now, as you may have heard, the IRS recently, probably just a few weeks ago, pushed back the effective date on this provision, which was set to come into play 1/1/2024. It's been pushed back now to 1/1/2026. We applaud this decision. I think most record keepers and payroll companies do as well. They all kind of joined forces and wrote, an open letter to the IRS asking for a delay. There's a lot of programming and system upgrades that need to take place, both with record keepers to be able to track this and code those sources properly, as well as payroll companies to make sure those deductions happen properly on an employee's paycheck or their pay stub. So the other thing to note here is that there are other catch-up provisions that are coming into play 2025 that are more age-based for those 60 to 63. That's separate than this. That is still on track for 2025. And also, we don't want you to get confused. There is the ability for employers to match employees as a Roth matching, separate from this Roth catch-up issue. And we'll talk about the Roth matching in an upcoming webinar and material soon. So, Seth, now that we know what the rule is and the delay, do you want to talk about some of the additional challenges and some of the guidance with this rule?
Yeah. So let's go through the challenges with this. This is going to be a complicated process to figure out how we're going to handle this, because as Chris mentioned, we're going to have to work with the record keepers and the payroll vendors. And right now, we see three main challenges with this reg. Okay. So the first challenge with this reg is something probably a lot of you on this call don't even know exists. The first is the regulation states anyone who makes over $145,000 in FICA wages has to defer Roth. Now the key is FICA wages. So that's only W-2 wages. So we're trying to get guidance to see if someone's taxed as a partner, so they get a guaranteed payment, or a sole proprietor where they would also get a guaranteed payment, they're not paying FICA on some of that money. So right now, reading the rule based off of how it's written, those people who are taxed, this isn't applicable to them, which we believe is not accurate. And that's one thing about the regs is they write these regs, and then we have to come in and we analyze it, and then we go back with questions. And this is some of the guidance we're looking for. So we're happy they pushed it back, because right now, interpretation of the reg is it's only for W-2 employees making over 145 and not people who are on a guaranteed payment. Okay. So some business owners may actually still be able to do Roth pre-tax, which is not what we believe the reg was intended to do. Okay. So that's one of our first challenges, some guidance we're looking for. So something we wanted to keep you in mind of. The second big challenge that we see out there is, as Chris mentioned, between age 60 to 63, you can actually defer more and catch up now per the reg, which is great. The issue, though, is this gets into a programming nightmare. So payroll companies and record keepers are going to have to be able to track, hey, this person's this age, which, again, sounds very easy, but doing these programs is very difficult. You're eligible now to do this. So that's the other big difference that we're looking for. That's going to be a programming challenge between record keepers and payroll providers. Okay. The last big challenge that's out there that I haven't seen anyone talk about, but I'm very nervous about it, is actually compliance testing. So right now, if someone is not a safe harbor plan and they're ADP ACP tested, there can be an excess, or there can be a, basically, let's thumb this down pretty simply. There can be a 2% difference between what non-highly comps defer to highly comps to pass the test. Okay. Let's say the test fails. Someone put in, let's just say $20,000, and the test failed. And the test failed when the highly comps put away $10,000. Okay, that was based off of the percentage, that what it is. Well, we can instantly say the next $7,500 is catch up. We can actually do that because that's where the test failed. So we can reclassify contributions that way. So that's catch up. And then anything over that 7,500 would have to be done back in a corrected distribution. Okay. With this new reg, if these people who are making over 145 are deferring and the test fails at 10,000, we're not going to be able to reclassify that $7,500 as catch up only if they're deferring in Roth. So the other big challenge we're seeing right now, we're anticipating is going to happen, is companies are going to have much higher corrective distributions. So if you're a client that has corrective distributions, we're probably also going to want to talk to you about maybe educating your people who make over 145 to maybe be deferring regular into Roth and not doing so much pre-tax deductions today, which again, they want the pre-tax deductions to help lower their income. So this is something that's kind of coming out that we're all discussing and working through, that this could be a challenge for some of these people that we want to be aware of. So these are the three main challenges we're trying to work through. Again, looking at the big scale of things, I'm happy they pushed the reg out because we need some guidance on the FICA. We need programming time for the 60 to 63 again, which is a little bit of a different reg that wasn't pushed out, but it's still not applicable till 2025. And then the testing. So this will give us all time to work on that testing situation to help plan and game plan for that for you guys ahead of time. Okay. So with this, I'm going to pass it back to Chris because I know he's going to talk about the for sale provision and the addition to that.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Good information there. A lot to think about in the next few years here. So shifting gears, now I'm going to talk about the increases to the small amount force out limits. So this is an optional provision that may be accepted by your plan. We think you should do it. This one's pretty straightforward. Currently, the small amount force outs can go up to an IRS maximum of $5,000. That's going to be going to a maximum of $7,000 next year. So as a reminder, this small amount force out ability allows plan sponsors and plans the ability to take terminated participants with balances still remaining in their plan and provide them proper notice. And if those terminated participants do not respond, that money can be forced out of the plan. So if those terminated participant balances are between $1,000 and the new limit is $7,000, we can force those out of the plan with proper notice to these participants, of course, force them out of the plan into an IRA in their name. If they have less than $1,000, again, with proper notice, we can force them out and those folks get a cash distribution, a check basically, to their address of record. So pretty straightforward. This one we think is a good thing to do. It'll help keep plans cleaner, as we like to say, and help those terminated participants get their money, get it to their next employer, wherever it needs to go. So any questions on that, again, please contact us after or put it into the chat. So the last section we get to before the Q&A is the self-certification of hardships. We've already got many questions on this, and this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So Seth, kind of turn it back to you to comment, please.
Yeah. So self-certification, this is one of the ones that is rolling out next year. It is definitely going to be one of the more controversial ones. I've done a lot of research on this one personally, and we are going to recommend it. So we are going to recommend self-certification for plans. Now, again, as Chris mentioned, this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. This is, I think, going to fit probably 90% of our current client base. The people who isn't going to be a good fit for is if you're maybe manufacturing or something where your employees are not going to really follow the rules and say, oh, I get access to money, I'm just going to pull it out. We do not want to do self-certification on your plans, okay? If your employee base, understands rules and can follow it, we do think this is a good thing. And the reason why we think this is a good thing is, A, it's going to pull the liability off you as the plan sponsor. Because right now they say, hey, if you certify the hardship, you as the client have to hold that documentation, make sure it's right. Now, we do that for all of our 316 clients, and we do work with you guys that are in our regular administration. But this is something to be aware of. It's going to take that liability off of your plate, which is good. With that being said, though, again, it's not one size fits all, and there's some other things that's going to impact this. So this is going to be an interesting regulation. First, the big thing is some record keepers are already making it mandatory that this is going to happen. Some are making it an option. A lot of record keepers pretty much all the record keepers I know were going to make it mandatory, but now they pulled back their stance on that because them making it mandatory is putting them in a fiduciary decision liability situation, which they don't want to be in. Some have hold that stance and will, like Fidelity has taken that stance and they're not going to back off. But others like Trans and Power, some of those, they are actually saying, no, we actually have to open up because we are not a fiduciary. And so they're going to make you make the decision. So that's a little bit of a program, going to take them a little bit longer because they were going down one path and now they have to kind of pivot because of a legal guidance they got. Just something to be aware of. The other big some of the other big challenges with this is we have to create a policy for this. So we're going to be drafting up a policy for you for this. If you are going to adopt it, and we're going to send an email to all of you in the coming couple months saying that unless you tell us otherwise, we're going to automatically enroll you into this. Okay, so it's going to be a negative election to enroll into it. There is going to be a policy attached to your plan for this. The big other question I had is, hey, you know what? If you're audited, so if you're a Schedule H size plan, which means anyone who has over 120 eligible employees, you have an outside audit. Auditors typically pull sample size, and they want to see that certification that, hey, it met the rule. They want to see the documentation. The AICPA, who gives all the auditors the kind of process to follow, hasn't come out with their opinion on it. But speaking with legal counsel, as long as we have a policy in place, that is a binding agreement that has to be followed. So the auditors, the AICPA and auditors are going to have to follow that. So if we say, hey, we're doing self-certification, there can't be a question on it as long as we have a policy to follow. So the big thing is we have to put a policy in place for it. Okay. The second big thing about this is we're probably going to try to roll this out. Our goal is to be sometime in Q2 of 2024. Because we have to make sure all the record keepers have everything built out in time for that, which they're working on today, and they're all on track. But we got them built out, and then we have to create the policy and do some stuff. So it's going to take some time, but we're thinking Q2 2024 is our goal to have this rolled out to all the plans, okay, that want to take it in. The other big thing is if you are a 316 fiduciary client with us, we also have to do an addendum to your service agreement, because in our service agreement, it states, we will work with the participant on this, but self-certification, we have to remove that. So that's something to be aware of too. 316 client, you're also going to have to sign an addendum service agreement for this. So something to be aware of. And then the last thing, what I've heard about this too, which is the best thing, and I want to tell you guys about this too, is Brad Campbell was speaking, and he made a point saying, if you have a participant self-certified, then that's taking the liability off the plan sponsor onto the participant. And that's the big thing that we want to do, is take the liability off you and put it on them. We do, and some industry specialists do think there's going to be a run on the money for the first maybe 6 months, and then it's going to calm down. So I want you to be aware of that too. So a lot of people have asked questions being like, hey, I think if we do this, everyone's going to start taking their money out and we're not going to have a plan. Specialists ecologists who are reading this, and they're saying, yeah, that's kind of going to happen for the first 6 months, and then it's going to die down. It's going to be a moot point. So we don't expect it to be as bad as it should be. Another thing. And then the last thing, just to do, and obviously you've heard I'm talking about some amendments here. Chris was just talking about the 7004. So we're going to try to tie these two together and plan document amendments as well too. As I mentioned, we're trying to block things together, and these are two that we're going to block together as well too. So just something to be aware of. When we roll at one, we're going to roll with the other. So it's all going to come together. Okay. So that's everything with hardships. Now I think what we're going to do is go to some questions that have come in.
Yeah, a lot of information. I just want to add to that as new guidance comes out, when we learn more, if the AICPA comes out with additional guidance, we'll certainly pass it along to all of you out there. So shifting gears, let's get to the Q&A now. I know we have a couple of questions in the system right now. One of the early questions that I had, hang on a second.
And, since we were just talking documents, there's one that just came in that was very good, saying, that came in, when do all these plan document amendments come out, and can we do them all now? Great question. Excellent question. So one thing to be aware of is, as we said, the government's kind of slow responding with guidance and all this. So 1/1/2025, we have to have all plan documents updated for Secure Act 1 and CARES Act, just as an FYI. So that's showing you Secure Act 1 was passed in 2019. And it's taken this long now to get the amendments approved by government. With that being said, what we can do, since they have this into law, we are going to create policy on the plan document that you will sign And then it'll say, hey, we're practicing this because the rule says we can. Amendments will come later down the line. We've worked with our document provider. They have to send all amendments to the government. They have to approve them, send them back. But we are going to create a policy in the interim that we're going to follow this because the IRS says we can for Secure Act 2.0. And that's going to be the rules we're following. And then amendments will come after. So great question of, can we sign them now? The Secure Act 2.0 amendments haven't even been created or drafted. We have to create a policy that we're going to follow. And then the amendments will come down the line and we'll adopt them then. So good question. So,
great. I think you kind of answered the next question, Seth, which was, can we operate our plan using some of these new rules, even if the amendments are not yet available? And it sounds like the answer is yes. We can create that policy with you, operate your plan because the IRS says, these are the new rules, even though the actual written amendments are not available yet.
Yeah.
All right. Question from clients out there. What if one of our highly competent employees does not want to contribute to the Roth for their catch-up? So with the Roth catch-up rule, when this comes into play for 2026, if they meet that threshold of $145,000 of FICA income, W-2 basically, in the prior plane year, so that'd be 2025, in 2026, their catch-up contribution would have to be Roth. So they can contribute their normal 401k amount pre-tax, but any catch-up would have to be Roth. So if they don't want to do Roth, they would not be able to do any catch-up. They would still have their regular normal 401k limit, which currently is $22,500. We don't know what it'll be in a couple of years.
Another good question we got, Chris, is if a business owner does not make more than $145,000 on his W-2, will he have to contribute the catch-up since he's considered a highly comp through ownership? Big interesting thing about this rule. This rule has no correlation to highly comped employees. So a highly comped employee is technically anyone who makes over $150,000. The Roth catch-up is anyone who makes over $145,000. So there's a new limit for this Roth catch-up. So if he doesn't make over $145,000, then no, because it's not coded to highly comped. It's coded based off income. It's different.
Yeah. Do you know why, Seth, there was another limit created? Just to make things more confusing?
Yeah, so I will say I do think I know why this was created. And the reason it was created is they're looking for more tax dollars in general. So the government's looking for more tax dollars. The reason they're looking for more tax dollars is because they're giving so many new credits out for new plans starting. So if you're a new plan starting, you could get up to, I didn't do the math, but someone did the math, saying up to $140,000 in tax credits over a 5-year period if you meet like everything perfect between $1,000 for people's match, $5,000 for reimbursement of fees. You could get that much money, and they're trying to now get that money back. And then in addition, they're letting people take out money early now for 401ks too, because of that whole $2,500 in emergency fund. So they're trying to get access to money because they're giving so much money out. So that's why I believe they're doing this. But they created a new limit that has no correlation to highly comped employees or anyone else. That's my interpretation. So.
Interesting. Next question out there is a little tougher one. When do you expect the first, batch of plan amendments to occur, or what's the first hard deadline for these amendments to be signed? Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, one of us is getting in trouble with all of our employees, so I apologize for any employees who are listening. So, so with that being said, we don't want to overpromise, underdeliver on this. Our goal is the team is working on this as we speak. We really can go a lot more full throttle on this after October 15th. October 15th, as everyone knows, is a big deadline for us, and everyone's really focused on that. With that being said, during that time period, we are going to come up with some of these policies for this. Once we hit January 1, we go full steam again back into compliance testing, hit March 15th deadlines. So we're going to try to figure out when to batch it best. My best guess is that's why I said Q2 is probably when we're going to do it, just because of the timing. We're going to spend from October 15th to January 1 with creating a lot of this stuff, have ERISA council review it, Q1, and then Q2 rolled out to everybody. So my expect is Q2, we would have a lot of this stuff rolled out and ironed out for you with policy and procedure. So, yeah. So we appreciate you for the patience dealing with us with this. So.
Yes, thank you. But just to caveat that a little bit, I don't think all the amendments for all these provisions will be available from the IRS and Department of Labor at the same time. I think they'll be working on them, kind of piecemeal. So we might have some next year, like Seth said. We'll certainly have our policies in place, but I would imagine there'll be some next year, some the year after that. So this will be a continuing process for the next few years. The next question is about a hardship process. So, currently for hardships in your plan, keep the same process. Don't change anything yet. So your process is going to be specific to your plan, and your record keeper. More than happy to have our team help whoever asks this question specifically after the call. But keep your processes the same right now. As Seth mentioned, we'll be reaching out in the next few months here, to talk about this self-certification process and possibly changing that if it's right for you and your plan. So at that point, if it does make sense for you, we'll have a policy and a new process in place with your record keeper. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and with that being said, I just want to add to that a little bit. Chris and I both sit on different advisory boards for TPAs, so we sometimes get some behind-the-scenes intel. What they are building out some of these record keepers, just to let you know too, is with self-certification, if a participant was to go online and actually self-certify, there is going to be something that pops up and says you meet one of these criteria, you have this document, and it's going to be very outlined that they're going to consent to. So that's from what I've been told what they're building, so that it's not someone going and saying, oh, I want distribution, boom, here it is, here's $10. It's going to be like you click it, and it's going to say, this is a very serious thing. You are committing to self-certification. Self-certification means X, and these are the only 6 reasons you can take a hardship. And do you have this documentation? So it's going to be very thorough,
Controlled.
from what I hear from the record keepers, in a controlled environment. So just something to be aware of from what I've heard. So
yeah, and most likely be some additional education required for participants. They don't just click through it like we often do on the iPhone upgrades and whatnot. The next question that came in is back to the Roth catch-up requirements. What if you had an employee that earned over $145,000 this past year? What do they do for next year, 2024? Again, good news is this Roth catch-up requirement has been pushed off to 2026. So no changes for next year. That employee can still contribute pre-tax if they want to, and keep doing their current contribution level. So just as a reminder, the Roth catch-up rules for those higher income earners has been pushed off to 2026. And then one last question here, I think we can squeeze it in before we are hit our 12:30 cutoff here, is several amendments you've mentioned are in queue for 2024. Some are on hold, et cetera. Can you provide a timetable or a chart with this information for us? I would say as soon as we have more information available, we'll absolutely do that. As you can probably see some of our other materials on our resources page at compass-cg.com. We love charts. We love the bullet points. It makes it easy for all of us. As soon as we have more information and more guidance from the IRS and Department of Labor, we will absolutely put those together for you.
Yeah, and what we can definitely do too is put. I know the true amendments aren't going to be ready for a couple of years, but the policies we're going to be creating are going to be available sooner. So what we can do is we can definitely put, hey, we're planning on these policies on this time, these policies, and then amendments are going to be here, here, and here. So I do have some dates, so we can try to work something up for all of you with something of that nature. As Chris mentioned, and get that out to everybody over the next month or two. So we can definitely do that. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned and keep an eye on your email for our next Need to Know webisode on some more important Secure Act 2.0 topics coming soon. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.